Hey YouTube, thanks for stopping by the channel again. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 tips that I suggest you do if you own a Toyota Sequoia, and 5 pesky things that I've realized after owning a Toyota Sequoia. So stick with me. Tip number 1 is, sorry, I don't know why it's flashing in the screen. It's something else, has to do with LEDs and the camera, but a lot of people will look at this and think, oh great, I'm getting 13.8 miles per gallon. This is not very accurate. When I started tracking actual miles to the gallons of gas that I was filling up, it was off by like 1.5 miles per gallon. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. However, if you wanted to reset this, you just hold the outer 2 buttons down and then it'll reset it just like that. So, you know, if you wanted to track kind of in between fill-ups, you can do that. A lot of people didn't know how to do that after reading through some of the forums. So that is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is actually for the fuel door. So a lot of times, you know, you'll open this up, it'll pop open the fuel door, as you can see right there. You notice it's barely open, and when I pull it, it kind of pushes it out just slightly. Well, when it's cold, it seems like the cable that runs between the lever and the actual fuel door gets loose, like it doesn't act as good, and you can see it's just barely out. So a lot of times if you pull it, it'll kind of snap back in, and you got to pry something up under that lever to keep this open. But what I found out is this, a lot of times you got to bend this either in or out based on what you think. This is the lock for the actual door right here. Kind of can't see it too well. You see right here, that's what keeps the door closed. So you either got to bend based on what yours is doing, you got to bend this either out or in. And secondly, this is a little spring mechanism right here. So you can kind of bend this spring out a little bit, give it a little bit more spring tension, so that way whenever it unlocks and unlatches the door, it'll have more spring tension to pop this out. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3. So the gap between the seat and the center console is just wide enough for your phone to fall into oblivion, but just small enough to where reaching your hand down in there, at least for myself, is a pain in the butt. It's hard to like grasp your phone and try and pull it out. So I have purchased these little seat gap blockers right here. I don't think these were that expensive. I think they were like 15 or 20 bucks. I will have a link for them in the description below. I put these in here and it has made my life so much more pleasurable whenever I drop my phone right there, or any kind of, you know, maybe a French fry, because I love eating fries on the go. But anyway, these are definitely worth the investment. I wish they had a tan one. They did not have a tan colored one when I purchased these. They may now, but definitely worth checking out. So that is tip number 3. Tip number 4. This is mainly focused on the pre-facelift models. The post-facelift models, I believe, have the antenna built into the windshield, but the pre-facelift models have an antenna base here that is automated. So when you turn it on, it would, you know, shoot the antenna up. When you turn it off, it shoot it down. And a lot of times those are broken. But if you look, you can get this antenna base. This is from a Toyota Tundra, and it's a direct replacement in here. There's a video online that I kind of followed where the guy took off the front wheel and was able to get up in the inner fender here, get up to it and change it all out. I actually was able to do it without removing the wheel. I just cranked it all the way over. However, it's a pain to do it that way. I would definitely take off the wheel if I did it again. I will have the part numbers for these on the screen here, and if they are on Amazon, I will have the Amazon links for these as well. And then of course you can buy any old antenna to put out on top like that. So that is tip number 4, changing out the actuated motor for the antenna to a fixed base antenna mount. Tip number 5 is, if you have, again, a pre-facelift model, you can change this cubby out for a switch plate. Or if you have a post-facelift model and you don't want these switches, you know, a lot of people don't use aftermarket switches, maybe you would prefer the cubby, you can actually just, these are interchangeable here. So I do have the part number for this. I'll have it on the screen here with a picture. And then the part number for this cubby is 58825-0C010. So these 2 pieces are Toyota factory pieces. However, I decided that I wanted to go ahead and change this one out, and there's a company that 3D prints the same exact piece, but it can hold more switches in it. You can see it can hold 6 switches versus the 4 that are in here. I don't really like to drill through the dash pieces to make my own switch holes, so I really try to use and utilize any factory opening that's already there to make it look as stock as possible. Another tip that I do for switches, if you look over here, I don't have 115 volt AC in this car, but this switch actually turns on my ditch lights right here. So you can see that, and my front LED light as well. And you can see it's actuated. I have it hooked up, and so it notifies me when it's on. I don't currently have a locker. This is a switch out of a Toyota RAV4, but also they made these for the Land Cruiser as well. I do plan to wire up my rear locker to this switch right here whenever the case is. So you can see it just looks really clean, really factory. You know, when I get in here, this is gonna look, you know, really factory as well when I get that all installed. So that is tip number 5, is if you wanted to add switches, use the factory locations to accomplish that. Now I'm moving on to the 5 pesky things that I've come across when owning my Toyota Sequoia. I've had this since 2016. You can see my washer fluid light is currently low. That is a normal light that's normally not on. There was a recall on some of the earlier models of the Toyota Sequoias on something with the e-brake. Randomly, like so, look, if I press the e-brake, you can see that red e-brake light comes on. When I depress it, it goes away. But a lot of times, it happens a lot more in the summertime. I'll be driving and the brakes get really hot and the e-brake light will just come on like that. There's no indication that any brake is on. I've gotten it checked out at multiple brake shops. I've done a little bit of investigation myself. There is no indication that the brakes or the e-brake is actually engaged. It seems to happen much more frequently. You know, like I said, whenever the brake system seems to be getting a little bit warmer, especially in the Texas summer, it gets pretty hot. But there's no negative effects that I've been able to tell in the multiple years that I've owned this vehicle whenever that light comes on. If it drives you crazy, whenever you stop, you know, maybe you stop at a stoplight and it's on, you can turn the vehicle off, turn it back on, and that light should be gone. As long as the e-brake is not actually engaged, that light should go away after you stop and restart the vehicle. So if that happens to you, just know that it's common. It's a more common occurrence out there for other people as well, and there's nothing specifically wrong with your Sequoia. It's something, the recall or the service notification sent out to Toyota has something to do with the ECU on a certain Sequoia model. So if that happens, just know that it's an ECU issue with that light and the heat, and it's not an actual brake that's engaged. So that leads me directly into my number 2 pesky item, which is very similar. Whenever you're low on fuel, there's going to be a fuel light that comes on right here, and it seems to come on much more frequently when it's really cold. I don't know for me if that is because maybe there's some liquid, maybe water in the float itself, and whenever it's cold, maybe that liquid freezes. I don't know, but whenever it is cold, and it does happen sometimes when it's warm too, but it seems to happen more frequently when it's cold, that fuel light will come on even though I just filled up. You know, maybe I just filled all the way up, maybe I'm traveling to Colorado to go snowboarding or something like that. That fuel light is really finicky when it's greater temperature differential. So if I go from a place like Texas and I go to Colorado in a short period of time, that gets really finicky over the first few days that I'm there. Afterwards, it'll kind of clear up on its own. But what I do whenever that happens is I typically just come over here, change the mode to distance to empty, and this is generally more accurate. Sometimes this will be less, like sometimes this isn't dead on accurate, but you know, if this is reading 0 or totally empty on your fuel gauge and you know you just filled up, you can kind of track how much fuel you have based on your DTE here. So that is pesky item number 2. Both of them are related to the dash lights up here. Pesky item number 3 is if you lift your Sequoia at all, you will notice a difference in how it feels when you're driving on the road. They call that the roll center. So the roll center has been adjusted and you have to recalibrate your actual yaw sensor, which is located inside the center console down under everything. I forgot to mention this when I was actually recording the video, but if you do not recalibrate your yaw sensor after you do a lift or anything that alters the suspension of your vehicle, Sometimes the traction control is more sensitive, you know, if you're going around a curve or you hit a bump while you're going around a curve, or even if the road is like has those grades in it, you know, kind of on the sides of the road or sometimes in the middle of the road around a curve. If you hit that, it will start to engage your traction control, and just recalibrating your yaw sensor with all of this will help with that traction control, knowing what your actual center of gravity is and what the new center of gravity will be. That yaw sensor is no longer produced, so if you happen to be at a junkyard and you are pulling parts off of a Sequoia that is of your same year model, go ahead and just pull that yaw sensor out. I believe it's right on the floor. If you were to pull everything out, it would be right there. There is a way to recalibrate and re-zero your stance once you lift your vehicle. So that way it's kind of communicating to the yaw sensor that this is the new zero here. That will be through shorting certain ports in the OBD2 plug down under here. But I will have a video on that shortly. You can get this. Look right up in there, that new bracket actually readjusts the factory location of that bar, and that really does help your feeling and your roll center for the vehicle. It's all geometry, folks. My number 4 most pesky thing while owning this Sequoia is I have a limited model, and the model that I have has the mirrors that actually can fold in and out. You can see right here, I have the button for it. I click it, nothing happens. That is because I have clipped the motor wire on both the driver's side and the passenger side, because somehow randomly one day I turned on the vehicle and there was a loud clicking noise, sounded like the motor was trying to work. I have to do it twice on the passenger side mirror. I bought a new mirror. I did it again on that second one, and then I just recently did it on this driver one. I have a video showing what that noise sounds like, what wire I had to clip on it. But these are for the limited ones that have the wider plug. I think these mirrors are heated, but they're a lot harder to find secondhand, and they're a lot more expensive secondhand as well. So for me, I never really folded in the mirrors myself. So it was just much more convenient and realistic for me to just clip that wire to keep the mirrors from folding in and out. And then I don't have to worry about it, and I could still have the functionality. Look, I'll adjust the mirror. The mirror still can move in and out. So that way, you know, instead of just unplugging the mirror entirely, you still have access to move the mirror around, but you're not having to hear that constant motor noise from trying to fold in the mirror. So that is pesky item number 4. And of course, this is very commonly known, the rear door hatch is the most pesky item number 5 on this list. So before I bought my Sequoia, somebody had actually changed this out to have a full metal rear door latch already installed. However, the factory one has a plastic little lever that opens up the door. That is one of the biggest pains of owning a Sequoia. There is no other door latch or door handle that opens the door on the inside. This is the only one you have out here. So if you get a Sequoia and you haven't changed out the door latch, or you don't know if it had already been changed out or not, go ahead and just do it. I'll have the link to the full metal one in the description below. If that's something you're interested in, go ahead and just change it out now. Peace of mind. Keep yourself from having that frustration. So that is my pesky item number 5. Okay guys, there are my top 5 tips while owning the Sequoia, and my top 5 most pesky items while also owning the Sequoia that I've come across, at least in my ownership of this Sequoia here. It seems like some of these items have come up on other people's as well, but these are just with my experience in this Sequoia that I've owned since 2016. So hope that helped you guys out. Like always guys, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel and this video. It really does help me out. I've been trying to grow the channel out lately. I appreciate you guys for taking the time to watch this, and I hope you're having a great day. Keep on enjoying life out there.